live and pre-recorded. This is the Red Ticket Blues Podcast. I am Brian Buckley. This is hitting the internets on July 21st, 2016. How the hell is everybody doing? You want to listen to the show and don't miss any episodes? Well, you're going to go to iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, YouTube, and Google Play. Subscribe. And just in case you didn't do that, you can follow me on Twitter at BrianBuck13 and at Red Ticket Blues. So it is another weekly edition of Thursday Talk. We have a guest, Mr. Jaffe. He is a baseball writer for Sports Illustrated, heavily into the Sabermetrics, into Hall of Fame discussion, who's worthy, who's not. And we'll get into a little, some other things, some trade rumors, some trade happenings, and the world of craft beer, which Jay is heavily a fan of, I should say. But before we get to Jay Jaffe, I want to just remind you of the sponsor of the Red Ticket Blues podcast, and that is SeatSwapTickets.com. SeatSwapTickets.com. Twice. Did you hear it? Well, what Seat Swap Tickets does, let's say you got great plans. You're going to sit front row at the Knicks game. Or you're going to see some concert. Paul Simon, Bruce Springsteen, somebody you want to see, and then you know what? Life happens. Can't go. No, there's no alternative, right? Well, I mean, you can go to those other sites where you can, 30% of what you paid for chopped right off, and you lose money. Or you can go to SeatSwapTickets.com. Why are they different? Well, I'm going to tell you. Just calm down. Relax. So what's going to happen is you're going to interact with real fans. They're not going to be some page where you're clicking refresh over and over again thinking, oh, man, am I being charged 3 times here? This shady site that pops up with the countless millions of them on the internet with just tickets. Seat Swap Tickets is different. Why? They have a profile. They show you that people are team friendly. They're fans of teams, is what I'm trying to say. They're just like you. They root for teams. They want to help other people. It's a community. All right, it's a community. Because Seat Swap Tickets was founded by a couple of crazy guys who happen to be proud members of the Mongo Nation. All right, they're offering Red Ticket Blues listeners exclusive access to their private beta before they roll it out to the public. I mean, they want to meet with you. They want to talk with you. They want you to understand how it works. So what you're going to do, you're going to contact them. Yes, by email. Yes, email. It's on computers now. You can contact Dan at the email address of dan@seatswaptickets.com or Josh with the email address of josh@seatswaptickets.com. Remember, the only place on the internet, the entire internet all over the world, cyberspace, for where you can safely swap tickets with other fans, it's seatswaptickets.com. And if you didn't hear me the several times I said this here, it's seatswaptickets.com.
He is the founder of the Futility Infielder, and he is a baseball writer for Sports Illustrated. Mr. Jay Jaffe, thanks for coming on the Red Ticket Blues podcast.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here.
All right, so let's jump into this, Jay. Let's go full bore, as they say, or some say. The York Yankees are 1 game over 500. That's usually one of their 3 spots, below, at, or above. And they're still playing tricks on the fan base. They got a 3-game winning streak going as we speak here on Wednesday night. Please tell me and the rest of the Yankee fans, this team isn't good, right? Remind us. And they need to sell, right?
Yeah, this is not a good team. I mean, they've been outscored by 30 runs overall. They've got, at best, 1.5 good starting pitchers. Masahiro Tanaka has generally been pretty good when he's gotten that extra day of rest. CC Sabathia has had a nice little bounce-back season, but it's really tough to string together the 5-game winning streak that they need, or the 10 out of 12 that they need, or something like that, when you've got the quality of starting pitching that they have. I know it's something that they haven't done in a good long time, but they really do need to be sellers. They really do need to unload as much money as they can, add some prospects and some youth to the system. They've done a good job of getting a little bit younger here and there, but there's just so much dead money, and the rotation is so thin. It's time to make some changes there.
Yeah, so, I mean, what I had originally written here to talk to you about was they've been rumored to be in trade talks with the Chicago Cubs. And right before we started recording here, there is a reported trade that the Cubs will send. They'll send Dan Vogelbach to the Mariners from Mike Montgomery. Does this affect any Aroldis Chapman moving or any potential deal with the Chicago Cubs and New York Yankees?
I think it's possible. I mean, I know that the Cubs don't want to part with the kind of blue chippers that the Yankees were looking for when it came to Chapman. We saw that they did a very good job last year of shoring up their bullpen in the second half by taking some chances with some low-cost guys, waiver wire types, and reclamation projects. Trevor Cahill, Fernando Rodney, and Clayton Richard. They got good mileage out of those guys. Montgomery, who is a former top prospect who's bounced around a couple times now, came up with the Royals, had a little bit of success with the Rays, a little bit of success with Seattle. I guess they've moved him to the bullpen, and he's had even more success. This is a quality arm. I think he could be a significant piece for them down the stretch.
The other team I wanted to ask you about is the Los Angeles Dodgers. There's also news today. Dave Roberts, manager, saying that, Clayton Kershaw, we don't know when he's coming back. We don't know if he's coming back at all. So what are the Dodgers looking at as a trade deadline is now just under 2 weeks away?
Yeah, they've played good ball since he went on the disabled list. I think they're 12-6, and they've cut about 2.5 games off the lead on the Giants. But really, this is just not the same team without him. They're like 500 at best when in games that he's not starting. They've lost Alex Wood for the year. Hyunjin Ryu worked so hard to get back, made just one start before going back on the DL. They've gotten some good work out of Brandon McCarthy and Bud Norris since they joined the team, but just there are so many holes right now in that pitching staff, and innings concerns for some of the rookies, Julio Urias and Ross Stripling, who gave them some solid work when other guys were hurt. I just don't know that there's a magical bullet solution for them right now, except to score 8 runs a night and hope that the pitching can stand behind that. So, I wouldn't be surprised if they get another Bud Norris type and maybe a bat for the outfield to try to shore that up here in the absence of any real solution or any real clarity on when Kershaw's coming back.
You see Puig going anywhere, or is he not going to be part of any deals?
I think they would be foolish to trade Yasiel Puig.
Yeah, I agree.
He's been much better since coming back from the disabled list with that hamstring injury. He's done all the things they asked him to do in terms of his attitude and his tardiness problems. He is an outstanding defender who's put up highlight reel plays, a lot of them this year. I think they just got to wait it out. The bat's going to come around. This is the guy who's only cost them $14 million over the next 2 years. I don't think you're going to get anybody back who's going to give you what Yasiel Puig, a fully operational Yasiel Puig, can give them.
I agree. Good contract and a lot of good years ahead of him. They'd be silly to trade him. What I wanted to jump into was there's an unlikely way that you've gone to Sports Illustrated. And what I mean by that is I think most people, the sports writer, interns at some nostalgic institution and befriends the grizzled sports writer that no one can get along with. And, it's a nice fluffy story, but yours is a little different. Tell us a little bit about how you became a baseball writer for Sports Illustrated.
Well, it started, I was actually a moonlighting graphic designer who wanted to learn how to do web design because most of my specialty was in print. This was back around the turn of the millennium. I started a blog called Futility Infielder in 2001. I did a lot of advanced stat stuff that brought me to the attention of Baseball Prospectus. While I was at BP, I got into the habit of writing for a larger audience about more teams than just the Dodgers and the Yankees, the two teams that I was following most closely. I grew up a Dodger fan, third generation. My grandfather was actually born in Brooklyn but was on the West Coast by the time the team moved, so never bore them the same ill will that I think a lot of Brooklynites do. I live in Brooklyn now, actually. I've been in New York City for 21 years. My friends and I have had a ticket package since 1998 to the Yankees games. So I was following the Dodgers and the Yankees closely, but I've expanded that to follow a national audience. And at some point, I think it was the Hall of Fame work I was doing and some other stuff that I was doing drew me to the attention of Sports Illustrated that they needed a daily blogger for a new blog that they were starting up called Hit and Run. And a friend of mine who's actually now my colleague, Cliff Corcoran, recommended me for it. And this happened, I guess, in early 2012, mid 2012, May of 2012, I guess it was. And I've been there ever since, and it's a great platform. It's cool to be doing stuff at Sports Illustrated because of the history behind it. I love digging into the archives, the magazine archives, to find something that connects to something that I'm writing about. Certainly going through some changes there. They've had a rocky time adapting to the digital age, I think, in some respects. But we have a good amount of fun there, and it's got a great reach. The platform does, and it's cool to be part of the Sports Illustrated legacy.
Yeah, I think a lot of media is maybe falling on tough times or having, mixed success with the digital age. But you're somebody, obviously, that you can see that knowledge and stats are a powerful tool. And I just quickly wanted to ask you about this. The Cardinals scouting director, Chris Correa, was sentenced to 46 months in prison for the hacking scandal, obviously. 46 months, it seems harsh, but that's the letter of the law. What do you think Rob Manfred and the powers that be in the front office of baseball do to the St. Louis Cardinals?
I think there will be some kind of remedy in the form of. I think the Cardinals are going to get fined. First of all, I think it'll be a hefty, multi-million-dollar fine, and I think there will be some form of restitution in the form of draft picks and pool money that's transferred from the Cardinals to the Astros. No idea how much it's going to be or what the timetable of that's going to be, but I would suspect it's going to be, a pricey thing, like a first-round draft pick or maybe a couple first-round draft picks or something.
That's going to be interesting because, we've never seen it in baseball or really any sports hacking, but when it comes to suspension, we've seen with the Patriots will take away a first-round pick, and a first-round pick in the NFL is probably worth a lot more than it is in baseball, so it will be interesting to see exactly how they'll do that.
Yeah, it is. And we're in uncharted territory. That's not the first place that Rob Manfred has had to delve into uncharted territory, but I think it was inevitability with so many teams, building these proprietary systems that somebody sooner or later was going to breach one, and that the game was going to have this type of scandal on its hands. It's pretty remarkable. It certainly is something that tarnishes the Cardinals' reputation for being a model organization.
Oh, absolutely.
And the one thing that I really have to ask myself here is I know is going around the game is how is it that nobody else in the Cardinals organization knew about this? I think it seems rather implausible, given we're talking about somebody who hacked in not once, not twice, more than 60 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Had to be talking about this to at least somebody else in the organization. So I wonder if there are going to be additional heads that are going to roll.
You would think so, because that's a great point. No one can really keep a secret, especially when it's that big and it's on electronic paperwork there.
Right.
So now, again, we're talking stats and how powerful they are. You've created a methodology called JAWS, the Jaffe War Score System, and you use that to evaluate Hall of Fame worthiness. So briefly explain what JAWS is.
Okay. What it is, it's an attempt to at least maintain, if not improve, the quality of Hall of Fame inductees by comparing candidates to those who are already enshrined at their position. So we're comparing catchers to catchers, first baseman to first baseman, left fielders to left fielders. And it's using wins above replacement, so we can measure, or at least estimate the value of a player's offense and defense over the course of the wide variance in baseball history when it comes to scoring levels and ballpark effects and things like that. I started doing this in 2003, late for the 2004 ballot, back when I was with Baseball Prospectus. At that point, BP's wins above replacement player system was the cutting edge. I've since moved on to the Baseball Reference version of WAR, and in fact, the JAWS system is available on every player card there. You can see on, say, Albert Pujols' card that he's got how he stacks up there. And what I do is I measure each player not just in terms of career wins above replacement, but also his peak score, which I define as a player's best 7 years. There are players in the Hall of Fame who are there because they burned brightly but quickly. Guys like Sandy Koufax and Hank Greenberg and Ralph Kiner. And it's easier to understand who's in the Hall of Fame and why when you look at it from those 2 points of view rather than just career accumulators. So what I do is I take the average of those 2 scores. That's the JAWS, and that is I tally the average, actually it's now the computer that does it for me at Baseball Reference. And I compare each candidate, and those who are above the average of the position or in the vicinity of it are guys I think are good candidates for election. Now, JAWS doesn't account for postseason play or historical milestones or awards, all of which are worth talking about when you're talking about a Hall of Fame player's case. This isn't designed to just be a binary yes or no. It's a tool, and like any tool, its value is in how the user uses it. And I'm gratified that there are Hall of Fame voters who take my system into consideration, some big-name people that have helped me widen the system's reach. I'm currently working on a book, final stages of the first draft of the manuscript here. The book will be out a year from now. It's called the Cooperstown Casebook on Thomas Dunn Publishers. And it's been a lot of fun to work on. It's killing me to finish it, but it's got to get done here soon. So, and I'm looking forward to the day when I can hold a hard copy in my hand.
That's great, and a lot of hard work goes into that. But how awesome is that? The fact that your system, this system that you decided to say, hey, I'm going to create this system. This is available to every player on Baseball Reference, and now you have voters in the Hall of Fame actually using it. I mean, when did you hear or see that voters are actually saying, I use the JAWS system when I evaluate a player?
It was a few years ago when the first of them started speaking up. I mean, it was available at Baseball Prospectus, and there are a lot of industry types who read Baseball Prospectus. So, I think it had some level of awareness. It was a piece of information in the favor of somebody like Burt Blyleven when he was all the talk of the Sabermetric community as a Hall of Fame candidate. But I think it was really the move to Baseball Reference that furthered it. I mean, it's a site that people hit millions of times a month. Everybody in the industry is using it. Being at Sports Illustrated and having that platform and getting to put the system on MLB Network as well. Doing spots debating Hall of Fame merits with Brian Kenny, the host, and guys like Ken Rosenthal and John Heyman and Joel Sherman. Frontline reporters. Who I think they spend a lot of time thinking about their ballots and they love to argue this stuff and some of them have actually taken it seriously. Not everybody does, but all it takes is a few of them to few of the influential people in the industry to start talking about it, and others will at least take a look at it. I don't expect everybody to be enslaved by it. I don't want that. But I do like that it's got a place in the conversation.
I mean, that's something. I mean, again, you are proud of. I don't have to tell you to be proud of it, but I mean that's a really great accomplishment. And you're going to be a voter in a few years, and obviously the effort you put into who should be in the Hall of Fame is slightly more complex than the Mike and the Mad Dog version of reading the stats and saying yes or no. So how much does it annoy you when you see some voters solely relying on archaic stats, making it well known that's what they use, or just using it as a platform for, that look at me moment of being a contrarian?
Well, I definitely don't like the latter. I mean, the look at me moment. I mean, anybody who thinks that their Hall of Fame vote is anything near the proportion of what these guys did. Even the guys who, we're not saying yes to. I mean, I spent a lot of years arguing against the candidacy of Jack Morris, but what Jack Morris has done is still hugely more important than what I did. Brought people a lot more joy. No, it bothers me, but you just build up a tolerance to it. I mean, it annoys me when somebody's spends their oxygen talking about players' RBIs or his win totals as being validating for the Hall of Fame cases. But at this point there are a lot of voices out there who will do the complaining about that. I think I get to focus on making the cases for the guys that I think are worthy, and there's certainly a lot of them. The voters have been slow to recognize not just candidates who are currently on the ballot, but you look back, representation levels are out of whack going back all the way to the early 1970s. There are a lot of guys missing from the Hall of Fame who should be there, and if I can help bring some of those to light, as well as talking about current candidates, then in hopes that those guys get in via the Veterans Committee processes, then that's better than complaining about somebody using pitcher wins to evaluate a pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, baseball is a little slow to adapt, and everything in baseball is virtually slow to adapt to things. I got to ask you here, sports writers voting in the Hall of Fame, I mean, a lot of people complain there's got to be a better system, not even with just the stats, but like with the aforementioned sort of, look at me sort of thing. Is there a perfect system? Should more people be included in the Hall of Fame vote? Should people be excluded? Or is there just no one's going to be happy?
I don't think you're ever going to make anybody happy, but I would like to see, I don't think the writers have an exclusive province on this. Back in the day when the Hall of Fame created, the voting system in 1936, the writers were the only ones who saw every game. There was no television then. You had the radio guys, but that was still a developing medium. Now I think it would be wise to include broadcasters. I know that they're team employees. I know that there's bias involved, but I think if you at least include the cream of the crop, maybe the guys who've won the Ford Frick Award, which is the Hall of Fame's award recognized for the outstanding broadcasters, or have some kind of qualification level, similar service time to what the writers have, which is 10 full years of continuous employment for your current outlet. I can see letting those people have a voice in the process. I can see letting historians like John Thorne and Bill James and a small handful of others have their voice too. They're not part of the Baseball Writers Association of America, which is where the voters come from, but these guys know their stuff. I think it would be great to include some of these knowledgeable people in the process, and might change the outcomes a bit.
I got to ask you here, last question on the Hall of Fame. Outside of Tim Raines, using the JAWS system, who is the one player that's getting shafted the most and belongs in the Hall of Fame at this moment?
Oh, just one, huh?
Who has the largest case, I guess I should say?
I mean, to me, one that really stands out from a historical standpoint is Minnie Minoso, who has been described by Hall of Famers like Orlando Cepeda as the Latin Jackie Robinson. This is Minoso was blocked by the color line for early in his career, but had a great 13-year run in the major leagues, mostly with the White Sox. Has kind of slipped through the cracks. Couldn't get recognized when the Negro Leagues did their big sweeping panel back in 2006. He's just sort of caught between. Nobody's ever really taken the full measure of him, in terms of the Negro Leagues and Major League Baseball. And, I think some of his late career stuff, like the cameo appearances in his 50s and 60s for the White Sox, have kind of overshadowed just the fact that he was one of the very best ball players in the American League in the 1950s and early 60s.
And unfortunately just passed away, so if he were to get in, it will be posthumously. So we're talking baseball adapting and evolving. Let's talk about, let's talk about myself, but okay. I've evolved to a certain extent where I love craft beer now. We're going in a completely different direction here, but when I go to a baseball game, for whatever reason, I cannot stomach having a craft beer. There's something, I don't know, it's just the lukewarm Bud Light, Tall Boy, peanut mixture. I don't know, that's what does it for me. Do I need to evolve, or does the great Jay Jaffe stick to classics at a baseball game as well?
Well, I guess it depends what ballpark you go to. I think I am definitely a craft beer snob. I don't like being limited to just Bud Light. I certainly I would have to be drowning or dying of thirst to drink a Bud Light.
So you are a snob, okay?
Yeah, I am a snob. I mean, it's not just because the lack of taste in those beers. It's the quality of the marketing. Budweiser's particularly hostile to craft beer.
Oh, absolutely.
No, I think that having bounced around a number of ballparks, I think that Yankee Stadium, where I go to most of my games as a fan at least, and I'm a BBWA member, so I go in the press boxes as well, where I can't drink, but as a fan, Yankee Stadium I think has an abysmal quality of beer. They've improved it this year, but just not very many craft options there. I don't think you need necessarily like the heaviest, hoppiest IPA as your accompaniment for a ball game. I think a good Pilsner, for example, is a suitable accompaniment. I just want something that's got a little bit more flavor and wasn't made by opening a fire hydrant worth of extra water to water the taste down. So. Citi Field, I think, does it right. They've got a craft beer station there, a handful of, I think there's maybe like 15 or 20 local brands in bottles, and I really like going to games there for that reason. There's some good beer there.
I'm a Yankee fan, and I can tell you that there are a plethora of things that are abysmal at that stadium, and I'm not really sure where craft beer stands on it, but it's up there.
Yankee Stadium has really increasingly frustrated me over the last several years. Just when you see how good some of these other modern ballparks are, its shortcomings, they just stand out like a sore thumb.
I got to ask my next question here. Out of all the stadiums you've gone to since the craft beer explosion has really taken off, what stadium sticks out the best with you when it comes to selections of beers?
Well, it's taken me a long time to make the rounds, but I mean, Seattle Safeco Field was great. Citi Field is great. Nationals Park, I think, was definitely an up and comer there. Target Field, I wasn't wild about the beer quality, but man, what a ballpark there. I think Citi Field honestly does it about as good as just about anybody. Oh, AT&T Park though, they're miles ahead of everybody else. I mean, because the craft beer movement there is just so far ahead of the rest of the game. But so I'll give them for my West Coast choice and put Citi Field for the East Coast choice.
AT&T Park and Citi Field, all right. And you are a self-proclaimed dark beer connoisseur. It's in your Twitter profile. In the dog days of summer like this, it's not terrible today, but later this week it is going to be in the 90s. Can you drink a dark beer without feeling, like bloated or like crap? Or do you have to break down the dark beer kind?
I love my IPAs and stuff like that too. But, there's a style of beer that kind of come to a little bit of popularity here in the last few years, and that's the dark IPAs, the black IPAs or Cascadian IPAs. And there's one I like a lot called Back in Black from 21st Amendment out of San Francisco. It comes in cans. It's lighter than a stout or a porter. It's pretty moderate as far as alcohol content goes, about 6%, maybe a little bit higher than that. I'm not gonna suggest that that's the only thing that you should be drinking. But if you want a little bit of that roasty character when the thermometer is higher up, it's a good option there. Most of my stout and porter drinking though is generally confined to the cooler months, but once in a while I like to have that little extra sweet taste.
And there is nothing wrong with that. Mr. Jaffe, I want to thank you for coming on the Red Ticket Blues podcast, but before you go, I have 3 quick questions for you to play us out. You ready?
Okay.
All right, so using the Jaws method, forget steroids, forget everything. Who is the greatest position player and greatest pitcher ever?
I think pitching-wise, I'm going to have to go with Walter Johnson. The strikeout rate was just so far ahead of his time. Velocity-wise was just so far ahead of his time. I think maybe Randy Johnson has a case to be ahead of him if you're talking about just how superior, modern athletes are to what was going on back then. Likewise, I would say the same about Babe Ruth and Barry Bonds. I mean, Babe Ruth number one personality in the history of the game, popularized baseball, maybe even saved it with the post Black Sox scandal home run hitting. Also a great pitcher in his day before converting. And Barry Bonds, I mean, greatest power speed combo we've ever seen. And it's unfortunate that he's remembered right now more for his transgressions and his hostility towards the media than for the great things that he did on the baseball field. But I think in time, maybe we'll get a chance to reappreciate that.
I think you're right. I think healing, it's involved. I think you're right. Number 2, you did some musical interest writing long time ago. What's the one album you can't live without?
Exile on Main Street by the Rolling Stones. Just one that I keep coming back to. I've known that album inside and out for more than 30 years.
That's a 2-disc album, I believe, correct?
I think it was a double album. Yes, they did it on one CD though.
Okay. And number 3, what is the best overall brewery in the United States?
Ooh. Jeez. I that's a good question. I think if all things considered, the one that I keep coming back to, in terms of their ability to get to break some ground and to get really out there and importance to the craft movement. I think Stone out of San Francisco, out of San Diego is really a high quality one. Oh, and I should also mention Petco Park as being a great place for craft beer.
I can imagine that. With Stone and with Ballast Point there as well too.
Yeah, I mean you look at the beer board there and it's like 48 craft beer options, and you're thinking, oh, I got Goose Island IPA back in the Yankee Stadium. I'm really thrilled to go home from this vacation. But Stone and Ballast Point at Petco Park. I mean, you can't go wrong. I'll it's tough to narrow down to just one. You could think
it's not fair.
Yeah, it's really not fair. But I'll stick with Stone.
He writes for baseball at Sports Illustrated. You can follow him on Twitter at J_Jaffe. Jaffe, thanks for coming on the Red Ticket Blues podcast.
All right, sure thing, Brian. Thanks a lot.
So there he is, Jaffe, Sports Illustrated, bringing a little statistical analysis from the Sabermetrics community and the Jaws community, and beer. So 2 things that go great together. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Remember, you can listen and subscribe to the show on iTunes, TuneIn, Radio, Stitcher, YouTube, and follow me on Twitter at BrianBuck13 and at Red Ticket Blues. So with all that being said, enjoy your weekend. I'm out of here.